Good morning, everyone. Exciting to be here, Unity in Naperville. I am Marjorie, and I'm going to be reading the daily word for today. So the daily word is forgiving. And the affirmation is, forgiving frees me to move forward. Memories of hurtful experiences and painful conversations can repeat in my mind like an old movie on a perpetual loop. The best way to be free myself of these memories is forgiveness. Forgiving another and even myself is a wonderfully freeing and healing practice. It doesn't mean I need to welcome unhealthy relationships or situations back into my life, but it does mean that I refuse to be bound by my past. The nature of life is forward motion, growth, and evolution. Staying stuck in resentment while life is happening all around me compounds my unhappiness. Forgiving is key to my growth. As I forgive, I feel alive, I feel cleansed, and ready to move forward. Whenever you stand praying, forgive. If you have anything against anyone, so that your Father in heaven may also forgive you and your trespasses. Mark 11:25. And the affirmation is, freeing forgives me to move forward, and freeing forgives us to move forward. And so it is.
Marjorie. I purposely, Parker, I purposely am waiting for my microphone to be turned on. Hello? Are we there? Okay, I purposely didn't tell you what the topic was for today. Because sometimes... Don said he forgives me. See, you don't even need this message. You're already ready to go. That's very funny, actually. Okay. So I'll just ask you, have any of you ever been offended? One. I saw one person. 2, 3, 4. Okay. My hunch is pretty much everyone. Here's a weird thing, though, about this. Have you noticed that only people can offend us? Not the weather. I'm never offended by the weather, my body, not the stock market, even though I might not like what it does on any given day. Our animals, it's just people that can offend us. Make it a personal thing. And it's the person that is able to kind of contrive this betrayal or intend to do harm. If it's an innocent misunderstanding, it's still only people that can neglect our feelings or ignore our needs. So let's just start with that idea first of all. Something about the personal interaction with other people that we can be offended by. And Lord knows there's a million different reasons, depending on who you are. Some of us could have been raised in a family environment where we were constantly being criticized by our parents or our siblings. Some of us are still offended by a partner that left us in the lurch in our business, or a spouse that betrayed us with an affair. It might be that we have felt physical or verbal abuse by someone close to us. It might be that they've taken money from us, that we got fired apparently for no reason. We probably also experienced from our loved ones hurtful words at some point that's still ringing in our ears somewhere. Hurtful words, or they lied to us, or they sided with somebody else against us. Lots of reasons that we might have been offended and may still be right this minute. So throughout this message this morning, I'm going to ask you to just keep checking in to see, is there something in me that I'm still holding on to that has offended me? No, I'm not going to say most. I'm going to say some of it has to do with taking things from us. You can ask anybody that invested their life savings with Bernie Madoff. Look it up if you don't know who that is. Or a spouse that left you with all the bills. Maybe you're a rape victim. And it feels like a tangible loss, offense to your being. And there's also inner offense that we feel when it threatens our self-esteem, when we feel unworthy because of something that someone else said or did. I don't matter. I'm not of value. Or we could simply have decided I'm an idiot. I should have known better. I'm weak. I should have stood up for myself when I had the chance. Keep checking in to see if any of these ring a bell with you. A lot of times we carry these resentments around for years. And we have lots of good reasons for that. First of all, I'm right and you're wrong. Yeah. And you actually could be right and they actually could be wrong. So you're justified. You're justified. But what about when you're trying to actually harm the other person that harmed you? Sometimes we hang on to that resentment to punish them, to not give them forgiveness. And sometimes it's about protecting ourselves from it happening again. If I let my guard down, what's to say they won't just do it again or someone else won't just do it again? I'm going to carry this around to protect myself. And there are some moments where we hold on to this because it's easier than it is to take responsibility for any part that we played in it. Anybody here reading Monday Morning Metaphysics with Reverend Mary Beth, The Eye of the Storm? Mary, you've probably heard some of what I'll share with you today. Taking responsibility for some of the things, not saying everything, but just check in and see if there's something I'm still holding on to because I don't want to face what I've done. And the results of holding on to that unforgiveness not only creates the emotional pain in us, but it also does all kinds of things to our brains. It makes it hard to make good decisions in life because of this energy that you're carrying around. It actually has an effect on our bodies, constricted, congested, high blood pressure, heart palpitations, illness, terminal illness can be caused by holding on to unforgiveness. And ultimately, we're hanging on to this victimhood, which activates divine law, which basically says what you believe in, what you give power to, what you focus on, what you're resonating at, attracts more of the same. So, now we've got a whole bunch of other people that are treating us like victims. Take a breath. I'm going to ask you to rethink my first question, have you ever been offended by anyone? And ask instead, have you ever taken offense? Because that is more real. Is it possible that we cannot be offended? Have you ever thought about that? We cannot be offended by someone else, but we can take offense. So what's the difference? What's the difference? Let me look at the definition of offense up here from the dictionary. It's annoyance or resentment brought about by a perceived insult to or disregard for oneself or one's standards or principles. Taking offense is an option. And when we do it, it's based on how we perceive what happened, what we believe about the person. And two different people can experience the same interaction with the offender and have completely different reactions to it. Do you agree with that? Completely different responses. So I'm not denying that harm has occurred, and I'm not asking you to do that. I'm also not telling you that you should get back into the relationship or come back asking for more. I'm not talking about condoning their behavior. Mostly, I want you to, if there's a crime, report it. This is not what I'm trying to say today, that you just roll over for more. But your feelings, your response to what happened is within your own power to change. No one can make you think anything, and therefore, no one can make you feel anything. And how many times do we say, you make me feel so? Not true. And I know that you're struggling with this right now, but let's look at Viktor Frankl's life. He was someone who spent time in a Nazi concentration camp against his will. But he chose to look at the experience from a different point of view than what most would do. Here's what he wrote up here on the screen. Forces beyond our control can take away everything you possess except one thing: your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. And he determined that this is not going to rob me of my joy. I am still going to see beauty here. And he lived through it. I think his book is Man's Search for Meaning. Is that right? Yes? My librarian says yes, so got that right. Check it out. And you've probably heard the saying, drinking the poison and waiting for the offender to die, that's unforgiveness. You're drinking the poison, but you think it's the other person that's going to suffer for it. That's unforgiveness. And we're here at this place where we can stop and ask ourselves, how do we free ourselves from resentment? Jesus, our way shower in unity, taught us that when we know the truth, we're set free. When we know the truth, we are set free. So here's an important question to ask. Why did I take offense? Because the true answer behind that is hopefully going to be an aha for you. Now, when you ask that question, why did I take offense? Immediately your ego will come in and say, because they took my supply. They took my self-esteem. They took my safety. They took my good from me. They took my love. Let me ask you this. Is that true? Do they have the power to do that? Did we give them the power to do that? What we teach here regularly, what we said here this morning, is that there's only one power, and it's the all-loving goodness of God. So, maybe I have a thought in mind that is not in alignment with spiritual truth that needs to be transformed. If God is for us, nothing and no one can stand between us and God's good. So let's try and shift up a level here and look at it through the eyes of God. I have said here before that God does not forgive. And a lot of you go, what? That can't be right. That can't be right. But let me just tie it back to what I've said. God doesn't take offense. God is not offended by us. God does not get feelings hurt by what we do. God does not need any human being to supply any need and basically has no needs. So that's the highest level of consciousness. And the question is, if we are spiritual beings, can we get to that point of view? If we are an extension of the divine, can we get to that point of view where we recognize this person is not my provider of my good, therefore cannot take good from me? Even though money may transfer out of my account, my supply is still infinite. We're going to talk more about that next week. Come back for those of you who are seeking to understand prosperity better in your life. But just recognize that our job here is to awaken to the truth of who we are, which means nothing and no one can take my good from me. It's constantly available to me. And therefore, forgiveness is not God's to do, and it's not our spirit's to do. Actually, our spirit hasn't taken offense either. It's our humanity. It's our ego that takes the offense. It's the one that needs to learn to forgive and understand the power in forgiveness and the gifts. There are gifts here, both in the offense and in the release of the offense. So let me go back to that Monday Morning Metaphysics book that some of you are reading, The Eye of the Storm. Gary Simmons has written about how you can look at conflict as a way to transform your being, not to give it back to someone else and not to see it as something that deprives you. So one of the things he starts quoting up here on the screen, he starts quoting with Jesus, love your enemies. And that right there, we've heard said probably since we were very young. It's kind of in the collective consciousness. We should love our enemies. But when you think about it, imagine Jesus saying that for the first time to somebody when they've been taught, because of their religious beliefs, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But here he is saying, love your enemies. That ought to throw you off kilter and seem impossible. But let me tell you what Gary Simmons says about this. Love them for being a reflection of what's out of alignment in you. Probably not going to like that, right? If you're threatened, then you're not connected to spirit. What inner resource are you lacking that, if possessed instead of insecurity, would enable you to relate to the person as not being a threat? The person is not against you as far as being an obstacle to your good, because God is your source. The person is, here it is, mirroring what part of you is not connected to your wholeness. Value the relationship. It's giving you the chance to grow into your wholeness. So I'm going to kind of go back through this again because that was a lot. Love them for being a reflection of what's out of alignment in you. When we talk about alignment, we talk about our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs aligning with what God thinks, what the mind of God is holding in consciousness. And that if we're feeling threatened, not connected to spirit. We can never not be connected to spirit except in our own awareness. So he's saying that if we're not aware of our connection to spirit. So there are some inner resources that are available to us, but evidently they are lacking in the moment. We're not aware of them because we are looking at this person as a threat, as someone who can take our good. But we've already learned your good cannot be taken. So here's the hardest line. The person is mirroring what part of you is not connected to your wholeness. So let's say they took money from you. They cheated you in some way. They robbed you of your job. I'm not saying that shouldn't be a shock to your system, but the system is your human self, your ego. So it will be natural for pain to go, whoa, but it's when we move it into suffering, when we hold unforgiveness, that we get in the way of ourselves. So let's say that they took money from us. After you get over the initial shock, you get to start processing it, thinking about your supply, thinking about what is the source of your supply. The infinite spiritual energy, the substance of God that becomes things. Think of all the richness in the world, in the universe that's available. It's always available to us. So maybe it's love. Maybe they took love from you, made you feel unloved. That's because we perceive that we are unlovable. That if we understand who we really are as spiritual beings, we'll recognize, I am not unlovable, I am love itself. And as I move back into the love that I am, I know only love in my life. So perhaps I needed to see that. Perhaps I had forgotten that I am love. And this person is helping me to see that. That's one of the ways that you can get your unconscious, your ego, to buy into that state of forgiveness. So keep in mind what your purpose is. Remember, you came here as a spiritual being, already perfect, pure love, and having this symbiotic relationship with a human consciousness, a personality, a body, and you've forgotten who you are, specifically so that you can have this experience and feel those moments of conflict and offense, and then transform it. Your ego will take you to all the lowest places because it's always out to protect itself. But your spirit will take you to all the highest places if you will allow it and remember who you really are. So the gift to your spirit is, oh, this is what it's like to be in the presence of not love. I get it now, which makes me understand more deeply what love really is. So now God has grown and evolved because of this experience. It's when we get stuck in it, buried in it, holding on to unforgiveness, that we're missing out on the chance to reveal our highest self. Take another breath. It's not necessarily going to be easy, but it wouldn't surprise me if we didn't all come here to have at least one moment of conflict that requires forgiveness, because it's a lesson that teaches so much. So when Peter asked Jesus in Matthew 18, up here on the screen, he said, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?" And Jesus answered, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times." Yeah, in other words, this is going to take practice. This is going to take repetition. This is going to take having to be conscious a lot in changing the way that you see this. Jesus said to resist not the evil one. And he also repeated this law, let it be done to you as you believe. So if we are resisting the person who hurt us or who I took offense from, if I'm resisting that person, I am giving that person power. I'm putting my faith in their ability to hurt me. And now I am letting it happen over and over again. In my resistance, I am just growing this feeling of victimhood. Jesus, hanging on the cross with those who put him there at his feet, said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." If we take that into our own metaphysical interpretation, a higher view that applies to all of us, humanity, humanness, does offensive things. That's just the lay of the land. That's just the way it is. Human beingness will do offensive things. Why? Because it does not know the truth. And in order for us to get beyond that, if we are caught up in it and holding on to unforgiveness, we don't know the truth. So Jesus said, "Father, forgive them." Metaphysically, it's the high spirit in us, the Christ mind within us, that must do this work, that must become our consciousness. So when we find that we are feeling unforgiveness, we have to call on that higher part of ourself to do the forgiving, because left to the humanity in us, it will not happen. Spirit in us, forgive. I want to share a story from Marianne Williamson. She has a very well-known book that's been around forever, A Return to Love. And I'll try and cut through some of the details here. So she was dating a guy that was in media, and they had a date planned, but at the last minute, he got given a pass to go to the Olympics that night in LA. And so they said that they would meet afterwards for their date. And afterwards came and went, and he never called, and he never called, and he never called. And she stayed awake, laying in bed, looking at the ceiling, wondering why he hadn't called, and going back and forth between being ticked off at him and wondering if he'd been in a car accident. And finally, she started calling him 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, no answer. 6 a.m., he answers the phone, and here's what happens. "Hello," he said. "Mike." I said, "This is Marianne." "Oh, hi." "Are you all right?" "Yeah, why?" "We had a date yesterday. Did you forget?" "Oh, right," he said. "I had kind of a late night." So she got off the phone not long after that, feeling a little bit of her self-esteem. I think the way she put it was, "I felt a kind of blow to my self-esteem that starts in your gut and shoots emotional black ink through all your veins." Okay, so somehow she went back to sleep, and then when she woke up later in the morning, she thought, okay, this is going to be fine. He's going to show up at my door with roses and say, "Hey, honey, let's go to brunch." And I'll say, "Sure, that's fine, let's do that." Never showed up, never called. Yeah. So now she's in this dark zone, and she's practicing. She's on a spiritual path that she's practicing, trying to figure out how to apply that to this situation. She said, "My first choice was to get very angry and to let him know it. Who do you think you are treating me like that?" Blah-de-blah, words I won't say out loud. And then she said, "My other choice was to forgive him and let it go, but that didn't feel good either." "It's okay that you stood me up, Mike. I don't care. It doesn't matter." So we're not necessarily talking about that either. So she finally landed on something that felt right to her. She said she realized that the first thing she had to do was deal with her own judgment. And as long as I was not at peace, my behavior would carry the energy of my conflict. Conflicted behavior cannot bring peace. It can only produce more conflict. Does that sound familiar? First, I had to deal with my own perceptions, and the rest would follow. So I came up with an exercise. I would repeat constantly out loud when I could and silently when other people were present, I forgive you, Mike, and I release you to the Holy Spirit. I forgive you, Mike, and I release you to the Holy Spirit. I forgive you, Mike, and I release you to the Holy Spirit. And since Mike didn't call back the next day or the day after that or many days after that, she's able to have a lot of negative feelings to practice this on. She said, my forgiveness chant, a kind of mantra or repeated affirmation of spiritual wisdom, worked like a healing balm on my emotional turmoil. It deterred my temptation to focus on Mike's behavior and kept me focused on my own feelings instead. My goal was inner peace, and I knew I couldn't have that as long as I perceived him as guilty. There's that word perceived again. Perceived him as guilty. In case you're wondering, it took him 2 weeks to call. And she said, the constant repetition of I forgive you, Mike, and I release you to the Holy Spirit, this willingness to forgive someone had worked on my brain like a pleasurable drug. I didn't care whether I heard from him again or not. So one day I'm in my house, the phone rings, and I hear Mike's familiar voice, Marianne. Before I could even think about it consciously, a real warmth and love filled up my chest. Mike, hi, it's so good to hear from you. And it was. It felt wonderful to hear his voice. How are you doing? I've missed you, he said. She didn't understand that. So she said, I probably didn't say anything to that. But I do remember this. He said, well, when can I see you? She said, how about tonight? Oh, no, I missed it. When can I see you? She said, when would you like to? He said, how about tonight? At that moment, words came out of my mouth that startled me as much as they must have startled him. I said with a lot of love and kindness, Mike, I really care for you, and that's not going to change. I'm still your friend no matter what. But when it comes to dating, we don't seem to do the same dance. So if you want to have lunch sometime, please call. But as far as a date is concerned, I need to pass. We both mumbled a few more pleasantries and then got off the phone. And I was at first worried that I'd rejected a brother, but just as that worry came into my mind, I saw an internal image of lots of champagne bottles with their corks popping off in the middle of heaven. I hadn't rejected a brother. I had simply accepted myself in a whole new way. Think back to what Gary Simmons said. He was giving her a gift to accept herself in a whole new way. He had a win, a lesson learned, and a friendship if you wanted it. And I had a win. Forgiveness hadn't turned me into a doormat. It had taught me how to own my yes and own my no without anger, with dignity, and with love. So, yay for her. And can we not apply that? Yes. So we're going to come up with some affirmations as we do here in Unity to help us train the brain. This is our chance to go to the gym, and we're going to strengthen our ability to forgive and to perceive truth by lifting some weights using our 12 powers. So we're going to go through these quickly. It's not going to take as long as you think it is. But these 12 powers are what will help us to get into that energy of forgiveness. And the first one is faith. Faith is our ability to see past the physical experience that we've had and instead see into the spiritual dimension that is right here with us as well, where our power comes from, where our source of good comes from. It's our ability to see that instead of the limitation. So up here on the screen is our faith affirmation. Let's say it together. With faith, I forgive. This has no power over me. I see only the infinite power of spirit working in my life. Now, just so you know, there's going to be handouts in the front room for you to take home. And if you're watching online, you can go to unityinnaperville.org and click on the podcast link, and you'll be able to see these slides from today. All right? All right, here's the next is our power of wisdom. And wisdom is our ability to just have an instant knowing of what is true. It feels like an aha, or it feels like intuition or a nudge in the right direction. And I'm pairing it up today with understanding, because wisdom tells us what is true and understanding tells us why this is true and why this might have happened. So our power of understanding is something that helps us soften and forgive more easily. So let's say this affirmation together. With wisdom and understanding, I forgive. This has nothing to do with me. Ego only acts from fear, and they don't know what they're doing. Okay, our next power is love. Love is our ability to see good no matter how bad it looks with our eyes. It's to look for the good within. It's to look for the Christ spirit in all beings. And as we look with love, we also desire love. We desire good for those who have seemed to take our good from us. So we see that good, we desire good, we work for good, and what happens is we attract good. It transforms the problem into good. See what happened with Marianne. Transformed her whole consciousness into good. That created more good. So let's affirm this together. With love, I forgive. Thank you for showing me the gift in this. I desire healing for us both and trust we will find the good. Now, there's going to be something, one of these 12, that's going to speak to you, so keep your eyes open. Our next power is our power of power, or dominion. This is our ability to stop the repeated negative ideas, feelings, beliefs in our consciousness. We won't be able to stop them from coming up all the time, at least from at the beginning. But the point is that once you notice them, use your power to change them, to pick something else to think about, preferably something that that brings power to the situation. Let's say this together. With power, are we ready? With power, I forgive. I choose thoughts of freedom and feel grateful that I live in a universe that is for me. So that's just helping us redirect our mind away from those obsessive, negative, blaming thoughts. And our next power is imagination, which we talk about often as our ability to picture something in our mind until we can feel it in our bodies and attract it into our life because of that. So we use our imagination to picture a new vision for what has happened already, so that we can start thinking about what we prefer instead and see that and feel that and attract that. Let's say this together. With imagination, I forgive. I see life offering me abundant opportunities for love, prosperity, and peace. This power, the next one, is our power of will. You are the CEO of your life. You make the decisions about what's going to happen next in your life. So we make that decision consciously, and we can use that power of will to remind ourselves, I don't have to be under your control. I'm not going to be under your control. So let's say this together. With will, I forgive. I decide that resentment is not serving me, and I choose to set myself free. Okay, here's our power of strength, which goes well with will, because once you make that decision with your will, you're going to need strength to keep making that decision over and over and over again. So it's the energy of God that's empowering us to keep choosing what is right, even when it's hard. So let's say this together. With strength, I forgive. No matter how long it takes, I am strong enough to keep choosing forgiveness. There's the power of order, which is basically how everything is created in our life. Mind, idea, expression. That's the power of order. So we begin by putting our mind into the mind of God, and we call forth a divine idea that will help us with this issue. And we hold on to that idea long enough that it begins to attract and manifest into our life. So our power of order is going to help us transform hurt and loss and redirect our thoughts towards what we prefer. So here's our affirmation. With order, I forgive. I turn to divine mind within and open to the divine idea that now manifests for my highest good. Here comes enthusiasm. That's a fun power. It's like a spark that propels us past something that's been holding us back. So it's a spark that moves us forward and gets us past bitterness, and it moves us ahead to what it is that we want. Let's say it together. With enthusiasm, oops, here we go. With enthusiasm, back it up, back it up. Oh no! Isn't that interesting? We're missing 2 of our slides. That's so weird. Okay, I'm just going to tell you what they are, and then you'll have to pick up your handout. So enthusiasm is, you just repeat after me. With enthusiasm, I forgive. I am set free from stagnation and look forward to the infinite love energy, and abundance that await me. Energy and abundance that await me. Okay, the next one is elimination. And this is our power to say, no more. This is not serving me. I'm letting this go. We can eliminate our attachment to the person with this power. We can also eliminate our attachment to being a victim, letting go of that role that we're playing. So repeat after me. With elimination, I forgive. With elimination, I forgive. I set this person free. I set this person free from my life and my thoughts. From my life and my thoughts. I release any habit of bitterness. I release any habit of bitterness and helplessness and go free to find my good. And go free to find my good. Sorry about that, but look how closely you listened. All right. Here's our last power. It's the power of life. And it's the power of life we think mostly as a healing power in our body, but it's actually that which brings new life to situations and to relationships and to life in general. So think of life as your power to restore what was taken, to renew your point of view in the world and about this person, keeping in mind that nothing can be taken from you that cannot be given new birth with the power of spirit. So, is it there? Let's say it together. With life, I forgive. There is no death in God's omnipotence. My good is renewed, and I am alive through the eternal activity of spirit. Okay, this is the truth that sets you free. When you are feeling trapped and probably don't even know it most of the time, that you're still holding on to unforgiveness, choose one of these statements that will help to set you free, because it turns your thoughts away from that limited experience and person and towards the good that you can be and have in this moment. It's only the spiritual energy that will heal this. You can try and force your ego to do it, but it's rare that it will just roll over. You have to teach it, renew its mind, talk it into believing that this is where your power is. So let's go into meditation and we'll do that for a minute, okay? This is our time where we give ourselves permission to turn within and just see what Spirit has for us here. Maybe earlier this morning you have felt that old familiar energy of unforgiveness. Maybe that person's face is before you now. Or that hurtful energy is expressing itself in your heart right now. Maybe you haven't yet found the good that is waiting to replace what was taken. And so we just acknowledge that. That's simply our human self that needs to be heard, needs to be cared for. And so we'll just breathe into that hurt and release. It might even be yourself that you need to forgive. Something that you regret. And this is our chance to release that and let it go. So we take another breath and release. We turn to our power of understanding. And recognize that it is natural for human beings to hurt one another in protection of themselves. Rather than be surprised, indignant, we use our power of understanding to know in this world there will be tribulation. I understand the ego is limited in its sharing abilities. And I also know this person is not my source of good. While they are trying to find the truth, I release them, understanding they're doing the best they can with who they are. And I turn toward my true source of good, of love, of well-being. I call forth the power of life to renew and replenish anything that's been taken, for in truth, it is always here and present in God. The all-loving goodness fills my heart, my mind, my body, and my supply. I use my power of love to recognize the good in this interaction. The gift here, the good here, is my growth, my awakening to my true source. I am alive with life. And I see the good in this experience. Grateful for the opportunity to surround myself in that love and to be that love. And if I seek forgiveness for myself, I know too, when my human self is in charge, it naturally wants to create limitation in life for myself and others. With my power of understanding, I see that. But I am more than human. The spirit in me is me, my true self. And as an extension of the divine, I give my love to this human being that I share life with and raise it up to see the truth of its being. I live and move and have my being in love. That is all that is real. I let it be as me. So it is.